The woman standing on his porch looked like a ghost carved from moonlight and memory. Jake Morrison had seen plenty of faces in his 43 years, most of them attached to trouble, but this one made his hand drift instinctively toward the coat at his hip. "I don't remember you," he said, though something cold crawled up his spine like winter water. She smiled, but it wasn't kindness. It was the smile of someone who'd been waiting a long time to collect a debt. "You will." Her dress was travel-worn but expensive once, the kind a banker's daughter might wear to Sunday service. Her hair, dark as creek-bottom mud, hung loose around shoulders that held themselves too straight, like she'd learned not to bend under weight most folks couldn't carry. But it was her eyes that made Jake's mouth go dry, pale green like bottle glass, and older than her face had any right to be. "Ma'am, I think you got the wrong Jake Morrison. Born in Tucson, 1847. Scar on your left shoulder from a Comanche arrow. You drink your coffee black and sleep with your gun under your pillow." She stepped closer, and Jake caught the scent of sage and something else, something that reminded him of places he'd tried to forget. "Still don't remember." The wind picked up, rattling the shutters of his ranch house like skeletal fingers. In the distance, his cattle lowed nervously, sensing something wrong in the air. Jake had built this place to be his sanctuary, carved it out of nothing with his bare hands and stubborn will. But standing there in the dying light, watching this stranger who knew things no stranger should know, he felt the ground shifting beneath his boots. "What do you want?" His voice came out rougher than intended. Instead of answering, she reached into her coat, slow, deliberate, like she was drawing a weapon. Jake tensed, ready to draw, but what she pulled out wasn't steel. It was something small, something that caught the last rays of sunlight and threw them back like accusations. A bullet. Brass casing gleaming, lead tip unmarked by impact. "This one's got your name on it, Jake." She held it up between them, and Jake felt the world tilt sideways. Literally. Jake stared at the bullet, his mind racing through possibilities like a spooked horse. The brass casing was old, tarnished at the edges, but he could make out the scratches carved into the metal. Letters. His name etched in a hand he almost recognized. "Where did you get that?" "From my father's pocket. The night you killed him." The words hit him like a physical blow. Jake stumbled backward, his heel catching on the porch step. Images flashed through his mind, fragmented, violent, painted in blood and gun smoke. A man with pale green eyes, a girl maybe 12, screaming from an upstairs window, the weight of a smoking gun in his hand. That was self-defense. He drew first. Did he? She stepped forward, and Jake saw something deadly in the way she moved. "Or did you come looking for trouble that night in Tombstone? Did you come looking to settle a score over a card game?" The memories crashed over him like a flash flood. Thomas Whitman, the silver mine dispute, the poker game that went wrong, the way Whitman's hand had moved toward his gun, or had it. After 15 years, the details blurred like heat shimmer on desert sand. "He was going to kill me, maybe. Or maybe you were just faster to convince yourself it was necessary." She rolled the bullet between her fingers. "I've been carrying this for 8 years, Jake. 8 years of wondering what kind of man puts his name on a bullet before he uses it." Jake's throat felt like sandpaper. "What are you planning to do with that?" "That depends on you." Her voice was steady, but Jake caught the tremor underneath. "I came here for justice, the kind the law couldn't give me, and if I don't remember it the way you do, then we'll see if your memory improves when the tables are turned." A dust devil spun up near the barn, and Jake watched it dance across his land he'd bought with money earned from jobs he'd rather forget. He thought about the man he'd become since Tombstone, the quiet rancher who helped his neighbors and never drew his gun unless coyotes threatened the livestock. But the past had found him anyway, dressed in green eyes and carrying his own bullet like a promise. In the distance, he heard hoofbeats. 3 riders, maybe 4, approaching fast. Jake squinted into the gathering dusk and felt his blood turn to ice water. "You didn't come alone." The riders materialized from the heat haze like demons summoned from hell itself. Jake counted 4 of them, spread in a line that spoke of military training or outlaw experience. Their horses moved with the steady rhythm of men who'd covered hard ground to get here, and the way they sat their saddles told Jake everything he needed to know about their intentions. "Friends of yours?" he asked, his hand finding the familiar weight of his colt. The woman, he still didn't know her name, watched the approaching riders with something that might have been regret flickering across her face. "I told them I could handle this alone." "Handle what, exactly? Justice or revenge? I haven't decided which." The lead rider pulled up 20 yards from the porch, close enough for Jake to see the sheriff's badge pinned to his vest. But this wasn't any lawman Jake recognized, and the men flanking him looked more like hired guns than deputies. The sheriff was a lean man with graying whiskers and eyes like chips of flint. "Evening, Morrison." The sheriff's voice carried the authority of someone used to being obeyed. "I'm Sheriff Coleman from Tombstone. Got some questions about an old murder." Jake felt the trap closing around him like steel jaws. "Murder case was closed years ago. Self-defense." "Funny thing about closed cases," Coleman said, dismounting slowly. "Sometimes new evidence turns up. Sometimes witnesses remember things different." His gaze shifted to the woman. "Miss Whitman here's been real helpful, filling in the details." Whitman, of course. Jake should have seen it in the eyes, the stubborn set of her jaw. Thomas Whitman's daughter, all grown up and carrying enough hate to burn down half of Arizona. What details would those be? The kind that suggest maybe you came to that poker game planning to provoke a fight. The kind that suggest maybe you carved your name on that bullet before you even walked into the saloon. Coleman's hand rested casually on his gun butt. The kind that make a man wonder what other unsolved killings might have your signature on them. Jake's mind raced. 4 armed men, one of them wearing a badge. The woman standing between him and any chance of getting to cover. His rifle was inside the house, 10 feet away, but might as well have been 10 miles. "You're making a mistake, Sheriff." "Maybe, but I figure we'll let a judge sort that out." Coleman gestured to his men. "Take him." The woman stepped forward, the bullet still gleaming in her palm. "Wait, wait," she said again, and something in her voice made even the sheriff pause. She was looking at Jake with those bottle-green eyes, but the hatred had flickered like a dying flame. In its place was something harder to read. Curiosity, maybe, or the ghost of doubt. "What is it, Miss Whitman?" Coleman's patience was wearing thin. Instead of answering the sheriff, she spoke to Jake. "Show me your hands." Jake held up his hands, palms out, confusion mixing with the adrenaline flooding his system. She stepped closer, studying his fingers with the intensity of someone reading scripture. "My father had a scar," she said quietly. "Right here." She pointed to a spot on her own left hand between thumb and forefinger. "From a fishing hook when I was 7, I was there when it happened." Jake's throat tightened. He remembered now, really remembered. Thomas Whitman reaching for his cards with his left hand, the way he'd favored it, the thin white line visible in the lamplight of the saloon, the way the man had struggled with his gun because of that old injury. "He drew with his right hand," Jake said slowly, "but it was clumsy, unfamiliar. He was left-handed his whole life, until the scar." Her voice broke slightly. "After that he had to learn everything over again, including how to shoot." The weight of understanding settled between them like a gravestone. Jake closed his eyes, remembering the fear in Thomas Whitman's face that night. Not the cold calculation of a man planning murder, but the desperate panic of someone who knew he was outmatched. "He wasn't drawing to kill me," Jake whispered. "He was drawing because he thought I was going to kill him." Maybe he was right to think it. Jake opened his eyes and found her watching him with something that might have been tears. Maybe he was. "I was angry that night. Angry about the mine. Angry about losing. Angry about—" He shook his head. "Doesn't matter now. What matters is that you're right. I've been telling myself it was self-defense for 15 years, but deep down I knew." She held up the bullet again, and Jake could see his name etched in the brass crude letters carved by a younger, more violent version of himself. A man who thought justice and revenge were the same thing. "I carved it the day before the game," he admitted. I was planning to provoke him. I wanted him to draw first so I could call it self-defense, but I was always going to kill him." Sheriff Coleman stepped forward. "Well, that makes this easy." "No," Miss Whitman's voice cut through the evening air like a blade. "It doesn't." "What do you mean, no?" Coleman's face darkened. "You just heard him confess." Miss Whitman turned to face the sheriff, the bullet still clutched in her fist. "I mean, this isn't your justice to take, it's mine. The law doesn't work that way, miss. The law didn't work at all." Her voice carried the weight of 8 years of waiting, 8 years of carrying a dead man's bullet like a promise. The law said it was self-defense and closed the case. The law left a 12-year-old girl to bury her father and figure out how to live with the fact that his killer walked free. Jake watched her face, seeing not the ghost who'd appeared on his porch, but the woman she'd become, scarred but not broken, shaped by loss, but not destroyed by it. "What kind of justice are you looking for?" She was quiet for a long moment, the bullet catching the last light of day. When she spoke, her voice was steady. "I spent 8 years planning to kill you, 8 years imagining how it would feel to use your own bullet to do it. But standing here now, looking at what you've built," she gestured toward his ranch, his cattle, the life he'd carved from nothing. "I think my father would rather I build something than tear something down." "Miss Whitman," Coleman warned, "if you're thinking of obstructing justice, I'm thinking of serving it." She opened her hand and let the bullet fall to the porch boards. It landed with a small final sound, like a period at the end of a long sentence. "Jake Morrison killed my father, but the man who cut his name on that bullet died the same night my father did. This man," she looked at Jake with something that might have been forgiveness, "this man spent 15 years." Coleman's hand moved toward his gun, but his men seemed uncertain now, looking between their boss and the woman who'd brought them here. "The law is the law, then let the law find its own evidence." She turned her back on the sheriff and walked toward her horse, tied at the gate. "Because I'm done carrying the past around like a burden." Jake watched her mount up, graceful despite her travel-worn dress. "What's your name?" he called out. "Your real name?" She paused, one hand on the reins. "Sarah, Sarah Whitman, Sarah." He tested the name, found it fit the woman better than the ghost he'd been facing. "If you ever need anything, I won't." But she smiled when she said it, and for the first time it reached her eyes. "But Jake, try to remember him better. Not the way he died, but the way he lived. He wasn't perfect, but he loved his daughter enough to die trying to protect her honor." She rode away into the gathering darkness, leaving Jake standing on his porch with a sheriff who no longer seemed sure of his purpose, and a bullet that had finally found its target, not in flesh and blood, but in the space where justice and mercy met. Years later, Jake would keep that bullet on his mantelpiece, a reminder that some debts can only be paid with the courage to become better than you were. And sometimes late at night when the wind was right, he'd think he could hear hoofbeats in the distance, not coming to collect, but riding toward whatever dawn was willing to break. The last light faded, and Jake Morrison went inside to sleep without his gun under his pillow for the first time in 15 years.